You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this week's episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And we've had Podium on before with George, and that was a wonderful episode, wildly popular as well. So I thought I would hit up Podium again for another episode because Podium offer such an extraordinary array of products to help us more elegantly communicate with our patients online, that I think this is highly valuable for any dental practice that's wanting to attract patients and nurture them and retain them in your practice. And now we've got Yazan Kharouf from Podium. Welcome, Yaz.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having Podium on the podcast again.
That is my pleasure. We thought we'd do a kind of a bit of a double banger like we did last time. And we've got a webinar coming up Wednesday this week, just in a couple of days' time, on the 24th of November, 1 p.m. Sydney, Melbourne time, that I am wildly looking forward to. And the topic that we're speaking about is why we should be identifying our ideal patient, the knock-on effects that ideal patient has within our practice, and how we can nurture them, keep them part of our practice. And so what I wanted to use you for today, Yaz, was finding out all the ways, once we have identified the ideal patient, and I encourage everyone to have a look at that webinar because it has some wildly important information for the success of your practice. Once we have identified who we want as part of our practice, how can Podium help facilitate that relationship? Yaz, will you be with me on this project of mine?
Yes. For sure, and I'm pretty excited to share that with the wider audience. I think we shared a lot of valuable information for these practices.
And Podium really have grown enormously. For anyone out there that actually doesn't know about Podium, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so like Podium's, I'm pretty excited to be here. It's actually the second fastest growing software company in US history ever. We were founded around 6 years ago, and we came down here to Melbourne, Australia to have a local presence. Since then, we started working with more like 100,000 businesses and leading the way in the medical space with really providing a more personal and holistic approach to these practices. Because what we've noticed is within these systems that exist in the healthcare space, it's a bit outdated when it comes to communications. It's very one way and it doesn't really provide that personal approach. So what we want to do is we want to help these practices stand out through the Google reviews so they can get found and chosen. And the cool thing about that is that we are actually financially backed by Google. They invested around $32 million into our software, which is so important when people actually search for a new business. So we'll talk a bit more about that. But yeah, essentially it's a cloud-based software that allows businesses to get found and chosen.
Fantastic. And we're so established in this online space now. And through my discussions with various members of the Podium team, which have grown ridiculously large. How many are you now? How many numbers are working in Australia now?
Yeah, the growth is like you're on a rocket ship, honestly. I've joined around 2.5 years ago, joined the Podium squad, and I was actually the 6th local hire here. We're now at around close to 80 staff members, team members here in Melbourne. We're looking to double that by next year. We just mentioned on the age. And pretty exciting news, Julie. Actually, 2 days ago, we received a Series D funding of $201 million and puts up a valuation for 1.5 to 3 billion. So we are growing quite rapidly and taking over in regards to communications.
That is just glorious. And you've had an enormous impact on many dental practices here in Australia already, haven't you?
Yeah, for sure. We're working with some of the leading cosmetic and dental practices in the space. We're working with more than 500, I would say, dental practices Australia-wide, whether it be in Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. And what they've seen is huge success when it comes to the quality of patients that are inquiring, and just the way they're conveniently communicating, because we all know that the phone and emails are quite outdated and people get anxious when it comes to jumping on the phone. So we provide more of a texting solution, and that's why we've seen a lot of growth in the space, because it's the way that people choose to communicate these days.
And that's certainly evident that it is their chosen form of communication now, because I think I asked the question of George or somebody within Podium, of the dental practices that sign up to Podium, how many stick with you?
Yeah, so it's ridiculous actually. You wouldn't believe it, but we only have like a 2% churn rate company-wide. So only 2% of people actually cancel after that 1 year of being with us. The reason being is once they jump on Podium, they see the amount of quality patients that they do receive, and the return on investment is quite huge. So yeah, it's only like a 2% churn rate, which is quite like world changing basically in that sense.
Gosh, that's magnificent. And that's proof in the pudding, isn't it? And before we go into what we're going to be talking more specifically about today, I do want to just share my thoughts, then the thoughts that I share with both club members and the clients that I work with one-on-one in regards to the modes of communication and how that human behaviour has changed over a period of time. And let me know whether you agree with me or not, Yaz. But at the very start of my career, so I'm 51 now, so I've been in the industry for a long, like 34 years or something. And at the start of my career in dental, it was back in the days where if you had a recall list of patients, you would call them by phone one by one, and you'd get to speak to most people as well. And if you left a message, they would ring you back. However, nowadays it's a different story. Whereas before, when you ring somebody, they would answer and if they answered the phone, they were either at home or in the office at a time that they can actually speak on the phone for a couple of minutes. And quite often they've got their diaries in front of them too, so they can throw a dental appointment time in there quite easily. However, nowadays there's a couple of dynamics going on. Number one is when you're phoning somebody, they're unlikely to be at home or the office. They're probably going to be in the queue at Coles or out for a run or out having coffee or shopping or all the many things that we have to do, kids' soccer games, all the rest of it. And they're not in the headspace to have a couple of minutes of conversation. So the likelihood of us actually interrupting the flow of someone's day and being a disruption to their moment is much higher than it was before. And so quite often that's where you get the, I'll give you a call back. Oh, yes, I haven't got my diary in front of me. I'll give you a call back. So for that reason, more and more team members are telling me when I call people to confirm their appointment time or call them for whatever reason, I'm just getting message bank after message bank after message bank. And quite often it's that 10-second message bank where you can't actually leave any quality message. But then on top of that, younger generations moving up are quite unlike me and old people who are older than me, who we prefer to speak on the phone. So if someone rings us, we are more likely to answer the phone. The younger generations don't. They look at the person who's calling and they go, oh, that one can leave a message.
Yes, for sure. And like you mentioned, things do change within the years. We started off with telegrams to mail to catalogs to email, and now really the preferred form of communication is text. But ultimately, forget about the past 10, 5, whatever years. Just 2 years ago, the world just turned upside down and it seemed like the world was ending, right? So people started to move away from the way that they behave in regards to, let's say we're both in Melbourne, for example, Julie, we had a lot of restrictions when it comes to distance. So what people tended to do was to Google best near me. So what people realized is, they need to pump up their Google reviews to actually stand out and get found. So that's one behavioral change that we've seen within the space. But ultimately, people are actually so busy in the space, like dentists, for example, Julie, as you know, you've had a practice yourself, you can barely take a lunch break. So if someone was to call you within your day, you don't have the time. And what tends to happen within the dental space is you do follow-up calls once or twice and no one's picking up. If you were to shoot a simple text that gets that message across about a tooth extraction or so on, then it's going to be way more convenient. That's where Podium steps in, and that's why we've seen that massive growth, is because of that behavioral change and expectations. And the thing is these days, and we've discussed this in the webinar, Julie, is there's different buckets when it comes to these different patients. And if you don't really provide and keep up with the trends, they might move away and look for someone that actually does provide a solution with texting. Yeah.
There is certainly an expectation, it seems, out there in the community that businesses that they deal with are on top of the newer technologies in terms of communication. I mean, email's been around for a long, long time, but email's got a notoriously low open rate, and I always urge dental practices that I work with, only ever use email if you are telling that patient to expect something from you. For example, I've sent you some information about that treatment that's been advised. Monthly newsletters are a bit of a different thing, but even if you are tracking the open rate on your monthly newsletters, you'll recognize how low that open rate is. How do email open rates compare with an SMS open rate, for example, Yaz?
Yeah, it's crazy, actually, the statistics behind it. Emails have a 30-40% open rate at best. Texts have a 98% open rate in the first 3 minutes. Now, even if you were to throw away those stats out of the window and really think about yourself as a consumer within any other sector of the industry, you receive emails, and those emails most likely will go to spam. Reason being is, there's promotional folders and so on. While through text, it's guaranteed to come to their number because there is no spam folder, or at least not yet, right? So it's a huge, huge open rate within the space. And people are choosing more and more to be open to text because it provides more of a personal approach. Because think about yourself, Julie. Who texts you? It's usually your family and friends. So imagine a business texts you. It just has that approach of like, okay, we are close together.
Yeah, and I think it all depends on the headspace that we approach that form of communication too. I mean, with email, I think some of us get a lot of emails and a lot of spammy stuff. And so we've kind of got that filter in our brain when we open up our emails for the first time in that morning, and we start being highly critical. Which ones kind of deserve to be opened? Which ones aren't going to waste my time? Whereas my approach to SMS, and I imagine I'm not the only one, is every time an SMS comes through, I'm instantly engaged. This must be unique, just for me, important.
For sure. And honestly, we do these case studies and surveys within the Australian market because of a backing with Google. And there's one statistic I'd like to share is that text has a 209% higher response rate than your phone, email, or even your Facebook Messenger. And that really patients are more likely, 2 times more likely to prefer texting to any form of communication. So within our studies, we've seen that people just prefer that as a way of communication only because it's so easy to get back to someone through text.
Gosh, it really is. And some of the dental software programs, I've worked with some practices where they send out the SMS confirmations, for example, but they have the do not reply. And I've received SMSs from other companies sometimes that say the do not reply to it. But this is one of the benefits of Podium, is that you can have a very easy two-way conversation with your patients via text. And I encourage all dental practices out there to embrace that, to desire that, to want to do that. That is how you continue to build more and more rapport, build the relationship even further when it's a two-way conversation rather than just one message blasted in their face that they may or may not have really taken notice of.
Yeah, and that's a big thing that I've been seeing in the space when speaking to dentists. So, to give you an idea, we have a few people here that work in the medical space. I really head up the healthcare space, and what we've seen is people use these practice management softwares, and it's typically like a cost per text, and it's like one way. So it could be like, hey, just a reminder about your appointment, click Y or N, and that's it. If they decide to say, no, sorry, I'm sick, I'd like to reschedule, it would come to another separate inbox, and they'd have to reply back through another text. The problem with that, it's not really convenient, right? It's not really two-way. And ultimately, it's costing the business quite a bit. With Podium, we actually provided more of a solution where it's more of a subscription to the software, and it's unlimited text. So we're not going to really limit you in regards to the way you're communicating, but really one-way general blast to your audience will no longer cut it. Your patients really crave connection, and that includes encouragement to converse with you one-on-one. So we know that patients want to use text messaging as a channel to learn more about local businesses, but it really goes further than that. It's not really just about, okay, cool, yeah, no worries, text is good, I'm going to send a text. It's about can they text back as well? Because out of these people, we've done a study, over 60% of people actually can't text back, and they'd love the ability to do so. So it's a really important thing to take into factor.
Yeah, and I suppose if you've got the desire to text back, but you can't, you then think, oh, now I've got to try to remember to call them. And it's just another thing that gets forgotten throughout the day. And so you're limiting your practice in that aspect as well. And what you just said before is that there's no limit to the number of SMSs you can send through. This is a mindset shift. So whereas before, where we're trying to condense a message down to a certain number of characters, so it just goes into one SMS, hugely difficult when the COVID situation hit as well and we needed to really expand those messages out. And so you're just thinking about, let's just get to the bare bulks of the message that I want to send through, and that's all. So we're getting rid of all of the rapport building stuff, the stuff that builds a relationship even further, such as hi, how are you, kind regards. All of those niceties are removed because we're trying to reduce down the character size. But when we're talking about shifting into our topic for today of communicating with our ideal patient base, those barriers are gone. So the mind shift is from just getting the core message through to continue to build and nurture a relationship. And I find some of the avenues, some of the opportunities that Podium offer can do this in such an elegant way. You will be seen as a practice that really delights their patients rather than just getting the core basics of communication through.
Yeah, for sure. And like people like text messaging implies like a more personal and real relationship. So if your messages don't reflect this trust, they might turn customers off. Right? So according to like our research, like 74% of consumers would more likely text a practice if they knew a real person was going to receive and respond to their message. So it's really about the conversational advantage. But ultimately within our platform, obviously we have so many features. Well, what's been game changing, especially coming with the Christmas season coming up, a lot of businesses are going to be shut, right? And that doesn't mean that these patients won't be looking around. It's Christmas, they might be getting a gift, they might be looking at veneers or braces or so on. It's their downtime. That's when they're going to start doing the research. So when they start doing the research, you want to make sure that your reviews stand out so they can find you. The next step is, when they find you throughout this time when all the businesses are closed, what forms of communication do they have to contact you? Most likely, it's going to be either over the phone, which won't go through because you're closed, it will go to voicemail, or it will be through email. Email, they will get a response through email and they probably won't even see your response later on. But what we've seen in the space is we have this little bubble that sits on the website, and we like to call it web text. And how it looks like, you put your name, your cell phone number, and you put an inquiry. It could be like, hey, I'm looking at getting veneers, and can you help me please? They'll get a text back saying, thanks for texting us. We're closed throughout this period, but we'll get back to you as soon as we're open. What it means to the practice is, and for the patient is, I'm not glued to the computer and expecting you to get back to me. But you as a practice has received a qualified patient inquiry that's really looking at visiting your practice. After, when Christmas comes through and it's New Year's, we have a campaigns tool where you can target that database that have inquired throughout your downtime. They can bring back into the practice. So that's going to be a huge ROI within the platform.
That's tremendous. And this campaigns section of offering that Podium has, that's relatively new, is that right?
Yes, it is, Julie, actually. And we released it back in, I would say, Feb, but we've seen huge success. I'd love to name this practice as uses us, but it's up in Cairns. I won't use it out of privacy reasons, but actually, they are mentioned on our website, podium.com. And they have received 3,300 opt-ins for people to text them about promotional messaging. And we all know how difficult it is to create an opt-in list. If someone in marketing is listening right now, they'll be like, wow, I want those people, right? And what that has happened is they've received 150 reviews as well. So it's a game changer, and it's something that we've been doing for the past few months. But a lot of people have adapted it because, going back to a conversation before, Julie, we've discussed about how dental practices have a huge database, that they're looking at new patients outside. But what about your existing patients that haven't visited you in the past 7 months to a year? You can re-engage with them through these campaigns and bring them back into the door through this promotional messaging to do like, hey, it's Christmas, we're offering like 20% coupon for teeth whitening, we'd love to see you, or so on.
I tell you that re-engagement's just so crucial. It's never been more crucial than right now. There's still confusion out there in the community about whether dental practices are open. Some are open for more services than others. Am I allowed to come in if I'm vaccinated or not vaccinated? There's still a lot of confusion out there. So, if you were ever, as a listener out there, thinking about reactivating your inactive patient base, now is the time. And Podium really do allow that process to be, as I said before, an elegant campaign that can go through. Because traditionally I've said to practices, when you are reactivating your inactive patient base, you've got mail and you've got SMS and you've got emails and telephone calls to utilise. But generally the return rate can be quite limited, because you do need to have, it's not just one communication. It does need to be a bit of a campaign to entice people back in again. They need that continual communication.
For sure.
When you make it so ridiculously easy to have that continual communication, then all of a sudden the campaign can roll out in a very timely fashion, have high impact. You're not trying to limit the characters, as I say, and it can be done real quick. It can be a little project that gets done over the December-January period. So 2022 can be a time where you can really build back up your patient base.
For sure. And I'd love to share a story on that, actually, Julie, a story that has happened during COVID with myself. So I have my partner basically had a huge toothache through this tooth grinding basically, and basically they thought that their practice was closed, and the reason being is because it is COVID, right? And everyone was assuming all businesses are closed. While my practice sent me a message saying, "Hey, we're still open for elective surgery. Your appointment is still going on," right? I went up to my partner and told him, "Are you sure that your practice is closed? Maybe you should call them and book that appointment because you have this huge headache from this teeth grinding." And they did end up calling the practice and they were still open. Now, if that practice was to send a bulk message allowing their patients to know, "Hey, we're still open and doing elective surgery per ADA's guidelines," then they wouldn't be losing that database to another practice that was communicating and allowing people to know that they're open. So that's just one way about the importance of communicating and not really letting things fall through the cracks for these practices.
I can imagine some practices are out there thinking during the COVID period, we have the information on our homepage, on our website, on our Facebook page about whether we're open or not. They can find the post in the feed, in the Facebook page. So the information's out there. However, nowadays, people don't go searching hard for anything. They're looking for the information to be either delivered to them or to have it so easily accessible that they don't actually have to go on an actual intense search for it. So we've really got to, as dental practices, in terms of communication with our patients, we have to think, how do we make it ridiculously easy for them to have the information that we find important to share with them?
For sure. And another story, Julie, that everyone can't see my face right now, but I actually have braces. And when I received my treatment, typically a practice would follow up or provide you with this little welcome package that has instructions about what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating, how to clean these braces, and so on. Now, I had a bit of a headache, so my mate came to pick me up. When he picked me up and dropped me off home, I forgot that welcome pack in the car. Now, I realized that once I was going to I was getting pretty hungry and I wanted to find food to eat, I didn't know what to eat. So I called my mate and told him, "Hey, do you mind dropping that welcome pack to me?" He mentioned that he was out for dinner with his wife and he couldn't until for a few hours. So when he did go back, he took a photo and sent it to me. Now, something that could have avoided this and provided a better patient experience for myself was, if you were able to text me through that text a PDF that has a form, that's ultimately going to save you paper costs, but ultimately for the patient, they're going to have it in file for years to come or months to come to go back and reflect on that. So that's just one way of the convenience of text. And going back to your point, Julie, people's expectations have changed. You use Uber, you need a car, you click a button. You're hungry, you click on Uber Eats, Deliveroo, anything like that, you click a button. If you want to leave a review, everyone knows it's not the easiest thing in the world. You want to click a button. So if you want to communicate with the business, you want to send a text. So It's about a click. That's it. You don't want to allow too many steps for the patient, or else you're going to lose them.
Coming on to our main topic, which is our ideal patient. And I'll just remind everybody, if you don't know the value of determining and structuring your systems, marketing, team recruitment around your ideal patient, do watch in a couple of days' time, do register for the webinar that's going on with Podium and myself, and the registration link is in the show notes. So jump on that. You should be able to receive you should be seeing some promotional material coming through as well. But considering that everyone understands how important it is to be communicating with our ideal patient, let's go through how Podium can help us attract and nurture and retain those patients. So from the very start, I think the reviews are going to play a very important role in appealing to our ideal patient, because our ideal patients quite often are already seeing another dental practice, and they might be very satisfied, undersatisfied. And so if they're ever on a search for a practice to move their loyalty to, and possibly your practice has been mentioned to this patient, the reviews are wildly important, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll hear a lot in the industry of people say, well, a lot of people know who I am. I get a lot of word of mouth. And that's where all my business comes from. Now, that is correct. A lot of people do look at personal recommendations as a strong thing. But we've done this data review survey where we've found that the top characteristics for Australian consumers say that are most important when choosing like a local business. One is obviously location. If you're based in Melbourne, you're not going to drive to Geelong for a dentist, right? But the other one is, of course, price and promotion, 55%, of course. And the third one, on top of personal recommendations, is 40%. So reviews are actually more powerful than your mate telling you, hey, visit this practice, because it validates the experience. What I like to call reviews is like word of mouth on steroids, because one review can be seen by hundreds. So what's so important there is for you to have a process in place within your practices post-treatment to send a review invitation through text, and that's what we do through Podium, with a review link. And the smartest of our link is it actually scans the browser, and if they've been logged in through Google, they can come in. Otherwise, of course, they have to log in. But that's the way they've been collecting a lot of reviews. Now, what that does is when someone types in best dentist near me, you'd stand out right on top and you'll be getting that first inquiry. A little tip for people on this call is if you're sitting, go check your reviews, go Google your business right now. I know a lot of people haven't done that in a while. If you're sitting below 4 stars or very close to 4 stars, what happens in Google when you type in best is it puts a filter in the algorithm of 4+, and you no longer show. What that means is you're not getting your ideal patient anymore. These people that are looking for the best.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard Angus Pryor, the great marketing guru for dental, he mentioned to me that his wife got a personal recommendation to go, I can't remember where to go to, let's just say a physiotherapist. And under normal circumstances, years ago, that would have been enough for her to convert over to this physiotherapist. But she then looked at the Google reviews to bolster that personal recommendation. And what you're saying is that if you get a personal recommendation and you have very few or very old Google reviews or very bad Google reviews, you may still not go on just the word of that friend or family member. However, what you're saying before, Google reviews on steroids, but you've got a really winning combination when you've got people both personally recommending your business and then people wildly more so now more than ever before, and this is just a growing trend, they're double checking that personal recommendation with the Google reviews. And so if you have both, you'll get that patient.
For sure. And I hear a lot of dentists saying, well, I'm booked out for months. Why do I need Google reviews? Why do I need more patients? Well, it's not really about that. It's really about picking and choosing, cherry picking the patients that you like to work with. Would you like to get more veneers? Would you like to do more Invisaligns? It's more about those patients, like you mentioned, the ideal patients that you like to come back. So what Google Reviews does is it brings the best of the best coming to you because they are looking for the best practices to work with. And price isn't that much of a factor because they want to work with the best. So, like to your point before, personal recommendations were enough before, but now reviews really validates that experience. And the next step is, if they find you, they like the reviews, then they need to be contact you with you, and we allow them to text you. So we'll talk a bit more about that on the next step, Julie. But ultimately, like another thing that I see is, okay, your practice is booked out, and you're all good. But when I look at their reviews, they're probably like seeing 100 patients per week on average, and they've had the practice for 5 years, but they only have 20 reviews. I find that quite ridiculous in the sense of you had the opportunity, even if you convert 20% of your patients in that month, then you'll be sitting in like 40 reviews already. So there's a big gap in the market right there, and someone in your space will decide to collect reviews one day and they will overtake you because you were comfortable in your space.
So Yaz, the big question, I see practices, as I say, with no reviews, 3 reviews, 20 reviews, 500 reviews. What's ideal? What's useful?
Yeah, so it's not only about volume, it's about consistency as well. So what you want to allow your practice to do is not be sitting at 100 reviews, but you've only collected a few reviews in the past few months. You want to be collecting it every day and week. That's ideally what you want to be doing. Because to Google, what it shows to you is that you're an active business and it ranks you higher on your SEO, which I'm sure a lot of practices have heard and been spending thousands of dollars every day and week and month. So it's more of an organic way to bump yourself and get found. Another cool thing when it comes to reviews, the words that patients say in your reviews, for example, convenient, great, quality, and so on, are key words as well that bump your search engine. So what I would focus on is both consistency and volume within your reviews.
Fantastic. And I just want to mention too, because of the ARPA guidelines around testimonials, and a lot of practices still think that they can't actually have any testimonials, and it's just not the case. We can have testimonials around how good the parking is, how easy, accessible the practice is, that the interior of it's beautifully designed, that the team members themselves are so polite and so caring. We just can't have testimonials that have any reference to the actual treatment results promised within the testimonial itself. So when you are asking for testimonials from patients, be bold with it. Say, if there are elements to how easy we are to deal with as a business, please let us know. How much you love our team members, please let us know. That's the sort of useful stuff, because that's what people are looking for as well out there.
For sure. And ultimately, you're not really asking them about the actual procedure. The way that usually people ask and I really recommend is, once the patient's done from the surgery, all you have to say is hey, Julie, how was the experience today? Great, cool. Can you leave? I'm just about to shoot you a text. Can you leave us a review? So you're really asking them about the experience, not the actual procedure. And that's why it's acceptable as well. Ultimately, the reason why we really encourage Google as well is it's a platform that you can't control and hide. Right? Compared to Facebook, you're not really allowed to collect reviews on Facebook. Reason being is because you can rank reviews from best to worst, and you can actually hide reviews. That's why Google reviews are actually within the APRA guidelines.
They are, because you have no control over them. Even if it's a bad review that's been put up there, then you can't even take those ones down. Maybe it's one disgruntled patient that had quite outlandish expectations. Sometimes it's a competition, a competitor that's planting a fake bad review. And a very good way, of course, to manage a bad review, because you can't remove them, is to bury them with a whole bunch of great ones. How quickly could a practice expect to be able to grow their Google reviews in a certain period of time?
That's a great question. There's a practice in WA, very regional, that has gone from 10 reviews to around 450 reviews in the past year. Reason being is because they're so consistent within their process. The cool thing is, when it comes to reviews, is Google understands that you're bound to get a negative review. So it doesn't mean that you will never go back to 5 stars or 4.9. It's about burying the bad with the good. And we actually have a PDF that people can access on our website called turning the negative to positive, basically, when it comes to Google reviews. And yeah, basically, you just need to be consistent with it. Now, how is it possible for you to go into higher reviews? The cool thing is that you're not out of the game yet, because even if you're sitting at 20 reviews and your competitor in the area is sitting at 100, as long as you're consistent with your reviews and they're not as well, if you're sitting at, let's say, 60 reviews, you could still be ranked higher because your reviews are fresh compared to those. As I said, there's multiple factors that come into place. So you want to be sitting at a lot of reviews and be consistent with it, and you'll be on top of your game.
Fantastic. So Podium also have the ability to, through SMSing, gets feedback from your existing patients as well. And when we're talking about trying to create a space, an environment, a service that we've identified with the help of our ideal patients, they want. So therefore, we're going to make sure we keep those wonderful patients, but then attract more ideal patients because we're catering our service to that particular niche market. If I was to say I've got a patient base here, I've identified all the ideal patients, I've flagged them off, I continue to flag people off as ideal patient or, category 1 or however you want to do it within your dental software, does Podium facilitate contacting that selection of patient and, with 2, 3, 4 questions that will really let us know as a practice if we're achieving our goals and provide us with further feedback from the patients of how to further finesse that space?
Yeah, something that people have been leveraging some people really want to improve their internal processes without public reviews, right? So they really want to really get that internal feedback. We do have a survey solution where you can actually send out to a patient saying, hey, Julie, out of 0 to 10, how likely are you to refer us to a friend? Or it could be like, hey, Julie, out of 0 to 10, what did you think about your experience at the practice? Or, hey, Julie, out of 0 to 10, how did the practice smell, right? So if they say something like 3, that would be an unhappy customer, and they'll get a follow-up question saying, oh, we're sorry to hear that. What could we have done better? If it's something like 8, it could be like, that's a happy customer. That's great to hear. What did we do well? Now, within the Podium platform, there's a dashboard where you can really see the happy and unhappy customers. You can contact the unhappy customers before they actually end up leaving you a negative review, right? The cool thing about the survey system is that people that tend to leave a negative review are the ones that want to express their feelings. So this could stop this from happening and solving it. So that's just one way that we've been collecting surveys and feedback internally to improve processes within the practices to really bring more patients. And another point that I'd like to bring, Julie, is some practices don't know why a patient isn't coming back. Right, they could offer him a pricing for Invisalign or something like that, and they haven't heard back from him in weeks. If you send them a survey saying, out of 0, was it about pricing or so on, then you could find out that that's the reason why you lost them, and it wasn't about the experience. So that's just a few ways that practices have been adapting.
It's a great way of avoiding any negative reviews as well.
Yeah.
The general rule, every new patient that comes through within a few hours, they are delivered some kind of feedback. And again, it's a two-way conversation now. It's not just one way. So you receive that, very rare negative feedback. I didn't enjoy my experience at all. And then you jump straight into them and you say, so sorry about that. Is there anything that we can do to help you? And all of a sudden, you're taking all of the heat out of their bad experience and possibly even getting a chance to convert them.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the best thing about it, because you don't know what you don't know. A lot of practices never follow up with a patient until it's the time of the appointment. There should be a bit of communication in between there, checking in the patient, making sure that they're actually okay. And that's where that survey system and texting comes through, because that's all going to be within the one thread, within the Podium dashboard, where you, your practice manager, and your admin team can see and communicate. So everyone can communicate within the one place and make sure all the patients are satisfied.
I love it. Now, on top of the web chat that we've already spoken about, where people can access via your website, you've also got team chat and video chat. Tell me a bit more about that.
Definitely. And just touching back on web chat, now a lot of practices do have a Facebook Messenger on the website that I tend to see, or a little web chat tool. Now, the problem with those two is they have to be manned and to get a response, right? For example, with the Facebook Messenger, you have to put in, you can either log in as a guest or log in through your Facebook. Now, I don't have Facebook, so I have to go through guest. Try it yourself if you have the solution. If you log in through a guest and no one answers in 5-10 minutes, then you're leaving and no one can get back to you because you never left the information and never communicated with you. Through web chat, again, you put your name and email. If no one gets back to you in the first 5 or 10 minutes, then you're going to move away, and they're going to be chasing you through email. So it's not really a convenient solution. What our solution is web text. So you go put your name, number, leave your inquiry, step away from the computer, go pick up the kids, and so on. And the practice will get back to you whenever it's convenient for them, but also for you, you're not held hostage on the website. So I just wanted to touch on that. But on video chat, it's pretty cool. So typically you do like these, for example, let's use Invisalign as an example. You can do just consultations. And someone that's killing it is someone in Tasmania. He legitimately jumped on Podium with the video chat capability back in March when COVID hit. And so he told the patients to put their phone in their mouth to see their teeth and give them a consult of like, would they be using Invisalign or braces? And the cool thing about that feature is you send it through text and they don't have to log in. It's just they click on this link and it opens it immediately. It's not like through, like, for example, these other softwares where you have to put a name, email, and download an app or so on. So that's really the video chat functionality that we have.
That's tremendous, gosh. And we are opening our brains up to these kind of video consultations. And during the COVID period, it's been enormously important to remain in very active, engaging communication with patients.
For sure. And even internally, you want to make sure your team, everyone's on board with everything. And to the team chat functionality, you can actually coordinate these reviews saying, hey, Julie, did you check out this review that came from David? Can he handle this? And it can all happen internally within the one platform. And it's all coming from the same number as well when you actually communicate with these patients. Whether it's me sending this text or you, Julie, it's all coming from the same inbox.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, that whole chat situation, we've got to start, as I say earlier, break open, do mindset shifts around what we think we're capable of doing as a practice nowadays. SMS used to be very limited to characters, but I believe that even with SMS, we can be sending through payment links to pay their bill. We can send, which was fantastic if people need to leave deposits before attending an appointment time. We can send through PDFs, YouTube links to videos around this is what a crown is, this is what Invisalign is. We can really start to build out this communication tool to be one of the main ways we engage our patients in our practice.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it goes back to convenience. People's expectations have changed within practices, and ultimately we just go from the end-to-end patient journey, and we don't really replace, to be clear, these practice management softwares. We work alongside these softwares to make sure you're actually conveniently communicating through two-way texting with your patients. You'd still be using your practice management software for your database and reminders.
If you wanted to send out a COVID message to the whole of your database on SMS, can that all be done via Podium?
Definitely, yeah. So what we've seen is what people have done when COVID, and obviously Melbourne has come out of lockdown, reopened, and went into one. What practices have done is they've decided to bulk send through Podium, the database, saying, hey, we're reopen, text us if you want to rebook, here's a link or something like that. And what that means is they've updated the whole database. Going back to the point, it's such a cost save because there's no cost per text. If you were to do that through your practice management software, some practices, it would cost them in the thousands.
It could too. That's absolutely right. And the thoughts that are just coming to my brain right now, when you've got the ability to do this, think about practices out there. Think about, for number one, the obvious, COVID, we're reopening, but you've got a video attachment to that. And that video is of the practitioner or the receptionist or one of the more outgoing dental assistants saying, we're open again, come on in. When you come through, there's going to be some hand sanitizer. We're going to ask you to QR code. It doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. We've got all the PPE and infection control procedures here to make sure everyone is safe. So whether you need a checkup and a clean or you've got an emergency appointment time that you need to be attended to, come on in. We're here and open for you. But now do it for Christmas too. It's been such a tough year. Again, we were here this time last year, but Let's all look bright and happy for a good future in the coming year. To all of our patients, our dear patients who we value so much, we wish you all the Christmas blessings and have a wonderful new year. To the birthday list, you can generate a list of people who've got their birthday this month. This is November. Yaz, fantastic. We are singing happy birthday to you, the whole team singing happy birthday. Really think really creatively about how you can wow and delight your patients with this form of communication.
Yeah, I love your ideas, Julie. It's something that people have been leveraging quite a bit within the campaign space through the Podium platform. Like the birthday idea is so good because it shows that you actually care about your patients, and it's a very simple setup for a reminder. Hey, Julie, happy birthday! Come on down. We're offering 20% as a gift, right? But another one that I actually really like right now, Julie, is the Christmas side of things. Like, wish them a happy holidays. You don't actually have to incentivize them with anything even. But the fact that you went out of your way and sent a text saying, Merry Christmas, we hope you have a lovely break with your family and friends, alone is going to show that the patient's just not only a number and a figure, a dollar figure, but you actually care about their life. So it can go a long way.
Yeah, and I think, the incentives play a good role, but I agree, like with birthday messages, with Christmas messages, Easter, these big events, like just show that you care, just show that you value them as human beings. And that's enormously impactful when you are going in there with a message of care without expectation of anything in return. For
sure. And what's sad that I see is that these medical practices, by the way, like these dental practices, they actually think about this stuff to do, and they want to do it, but it's about the additional cost that stops them from doing these blast messages or from communicating with your patients. And that's why with Podium, we will always be a platform that allows you to text your patients two-way with just a flat kind of subscription of the platform, because we don't want to limit you with the way you're communicating with your patients.
So, Yaz, hopefully we have piqued everyone's interest on this whole new world of detailed SMS messaging to further deepen the relationship that we have with our existing patients, but also to be attracting our ideal patients into our practice. So, as a reminder, go straight to the show notes. You will see a registration link for our webinar that we have got planned for Wednesday, this Wednesday, the 24th of November. It starts at 1 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, so Melbourne, Sydney time. And the title of it's Why Identifying and Attracting Your Ideal Patient is Crucial to Your Success. And so it's a fantastic topic, and we're going to have lots of insights inside that webinar. So please do register. But Yaz, for the practices that think I really want to go down this journey with Podium, what is their best next step to contact you?
Yeah, there's a few steps. One is you can Google us, or jump on our website, podium.com, and request a demo with us where we go one-on-one and do like more of a consultative approach and really dig deep into your practice and how it really fits in and see if Podium is the right fit for yourself. Otherwise, you can text me just on 043 5758 541 and we can chat.
Fantastic. I'll add that number in the show notes as well. Well, Yaz, you have been absolutely glorious today. I've learned so much, and I'm sure all of the listeners out there have learned an enormous amount as well. And you've really helped bring home the importance of looking at this aspect of dental practices. So with all my heart, thank you.
I appreciate you, Julie. It's been an honor being here.
See you next time.
Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn every week where I share insights, systems and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier. They are recording so you can watch them at a time that suit you. Members also have full access to the library of all of our past topics. It is a powerful and effective way to upskill your team. I hope to see you there.